WWE's Bash in Berlin is set to be the first event of its kind. WWE has never held a pay-per-view or PLE in Germany, so this is going to be the first time they've ever done something like this, and the first time they've even had a televised event since the late 90s. Now, they have held things that are related to bashes before, being the Bash and the Great American Bash, over the course of the 2000s and 2010s. I decided to take a look back at one of those events in 2005, expecting it to be a horrendous show, as it was rated less than a 4 on a certain wrestling database. However, I came in with horrendous expectations and was pleasantly surprised by most everything I saw. Therefore, not asking if this is one of the worst shows ever, but rather if it is one of the best shows ever.
Now, SmackDown and WWE.com present the Great American Bash.
I was thinking about what I wanted to do in the build-up to Bash in Berlin. After all, there had never been a previous Bash in Berlin, as I already mentioned, so what was I going to review? Because I knew I wanted to review something. I decided, well, there have been other Bash shows in the past, so I may as well just look at what happened on them to see, oh, maybe this can relate to be close enough. Then I decided to look at each of the pay-per-views that had happened, and the worst rated of the bunch was the Great American Bash 2004, but then I realized so many people have already covered that show, there's really nothing else for me to look at that other people haven't already covered. So I decided to look at the second worst rated, the Great American Bash 2005. This show is very odd. It's a SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view in 2005, so it's not going to be very good anyways. However, when I came into it, as I've said, I was like, okay, most of this is going to be bad. I'm not really going to enjoy watching this. But as I went on, I was at least being moderately entertained with every single match I'm seeing, save only two. So I was thinking, wow, this is surprising me greatly. But I did take a lot of notes that I'm going to be going over here for you today so that we can cover everything that happens on the show. The show kicked off with Eminem defending the tag team titles against Heidenreich and Road Warrior Animal. Yes, that was a tag team. I don't know why. But both teams actually ball out here with Animal and Heidenreich getting the W. Now, both of these guys have their flaws. Animal was getting old at this point, and Heidenreich's, well, bad Gunther. And still, they came out with a good match. And if you don't know my rating system by this point, I generally abide by 5 different levels. 5 is great, 4 is good, 3 is fine, 2 is poor, and 1 is bad. Only if a match is extremely good or bad does that change at all, but that's what I'm going to be going off of for most of how I review things. Anyways, this is actually pretty good because Eminem are able to keep up and make the other guys look pretty friggin' good, even though they do have those flaws, maybe a bit of clumsiness, old age, this, that, and the other thing. But Eminem spent most of the match working over Heidenreich, but leading to that inevitable Animal hot tag, which led to Animal coming in and rolling through both of them, and Melina once at one point, and kicking out of a title shot, or getting bonked in the face by it, at a 2. They end up getting the win with a Doomsday device, with Heidenreich going up and above getting the pinfall. This is a weird match for 2 reasons. One, why are Animal and Heidenreich a tag team? And 2, why are they tag team champions? But it is a good match, which Animal does devote to the recently passed at the time Road Warrior Hawk, who passed away about 2 years prior to this. So this was a bit of a nice moment, having an homage to him. They played the Road Warriors theme song as their entrance, that song, and it was a fine match, but because of that stipulation and how good they actually kind of looked, I'm going to be giving it a good. We had a small backstage segment with Eddie Guerrero adding a stipulation to his match with Rey Mysterio later on, where Dominic has to watch from ringside. He also says that Dom will hear Eddie's bedtime story once Eddie gets the W. This is one of Dom's first appearances. Obviously, he had appeared a couple of times prior, but this was one of his bigger ones, as he had appeared at SummerSlam earlier on in the year, and then again here, part of the same feud with Eddie. This was a bit of an odd moment because it's a really weird thing to base a feud around, like, I'm gonna talk to your child, ooh, but oh well. Then we move on to Christian versus Booker T. I saw this match, I was like, oh, they're pretty good, let's see how this goes, and I was blown away. The beginning of this match is, fine. But oh my goodness gracious, the end of it absolutely knocked my socks off. I saw nothing out of this originally. I was like, okay, maybe they're going to have a decent match. but wow. Anyways, so I came in, I saw who was in the match, and I was like, this is fine. And it starts like that, but it works its way into second gear, and once it hits, oh my goodness gracious. So Booker does a code red. He counters a charging attack with a bookend. He does a second rope scissors kick. Meanwhile, Christian reverses a scissors kick into a kill switch, has 3 or 4 great near falls, and sells really, really well during this match. It's incredible. I don't have either of them with me for the moment, but we're going to use Pac and Daniel Bryan as our examples here. Again, not very related, but nonetheless. Oh, and your new AEW World Champion. But nonetheless, Booker, he's on the top rope, does a code red out of nowhere. 1, 2, Christian's able to kick out. Christian reverses a scissors kick, turns it around, gets it into a kill switch position. Kill switch, Booker kicks out. Oh my goodness gracious, this match is incredibly fast-paced and well done. I was impressed. I gave this a great. I wasn't expecting much out of it, but oh my goodness gracious. I recommend you watch this match if you have time. And I like to use cagematch.net, which is a wrestling database, for my information for these kinds of things. And they rated this the second highest match on the show, but only at a 6.06. So I wasn't really expecting that much, but maybe it's just my type of thing because I was blown away. Then we get a backstage promo with Melina being annoyed that Eminem lost earlier, but she promises they will end up winning the belts back. She also says that he'll strip her opponent later on, Torrie Wilson, in their bra and panties match. That's 2005 for you. Then we move on to Orlando Jordan versus Chris Benoit. That's also 2005 for you, for the United States Championship. This is fine. It's nothing too special. It's honestly a good match, but it's a little bit too long. It's only 14 minutes, but it feels like it's 22. Like I was in the middle of the match like, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? Because half the match is just, rest hold, let's sell on the ground, brawl, and it's really nothing interesting going on. If you shave this down to 9 or 10 minutes, I think you can get this to a good status. However, is too much lying around and brawling, as I mentioned. Nonetheless, Chris does unsurprisingly well, while Orlando does fine. Jordan ends up getting the win with something he had teased early on in the match, trying to loosen up a turnbuckle pad. However, it doesn't come loose until the very end when Chris gets whacked into it. And someone mentioned that on I think Twitter or Reddit, how every Chris Benoit match has that one moment where you're like, that's what did it. That is the moment for this match. Because, sorry, Pop. Yeah, I guess I may as well use that as my example. He's getting set up. He gets launched. Bam! And then he falls backwards, knocked out completely. 1, 2, 3. Orlando Jordan retains. It's not a clean win by any means, and it's not the best in hindsight, even though, yes, Chris Benoit is probably not as good of a person as Orlando Jordan. I don't actually know what Orlando Jordan does now. But I can hopefully rightfully assume that he's a better person than Chris Benoit. Because if he isn't, I would be greatly disappointed, to say the least. So let me see. Yeah, what is he doing right now? Okay, well, based on the fact that he did not, I'm going to assume that he is a better person than Chris Benoit, so this booking decision was correct. Anyways, we will move on to the next match of the show, Undertaker versus Muhammed Hassan. Now, this match and this story, I wasn't alive when this happened, so I don't really know why people hate this so much. I get it. It's in bad taste. However, he is a promising heel in Muhammed Hassan, and what happens in this match is a disgrace, because this match is rated like a 2 on Cage Match. I think it's at the very least fine, but let's get into the details. And as I said in my writing, quote, this match purely as a wrestling match is fine, end quote, which is exactly what the feeling should be, but people are like, oh, he is a terrorist. Oh no. The whole point is that he's not a terrorist, at least from the video packages that I saw. Now, yes, I may be completely misreading this entire scenario, but from what I could see, that is literally the entire story. He's like, I'm not a terrorist. Y'all keep misinterpreting because I'm Iraqi or Arab American or whatever. But nonetheless, the angle and concept probably would have worked wonders like in the New Generation era, but in 05, no. The Iron Sheik. Wonderful heel gimmick in the 80s. But in 05, 25 years later, that is apparently not going to fly, but because, I guess after 9/11 and all. But nonetheless, Hassan has a couple of masked cronies who are around the ring, and they keep messing with Taker throughout the match, which has one of them choke Taker out with like I don't know how to describe what this weapon is. I'm pretty sure you can use it as a weapon in Dead by Daylight, but it's like two bars, and then they're connected by a very thin, like, razor wire, and he just does this. I don't know what that's called, but that thing, he chokes Taker with that, and eventually Taker's like, "Oh, stop beating me up!" And he takes it to all the different goons, and he beats them all up. Taker ends up winning with a choke slam in the middle of this. It's completely out of nowhere, if I'm being honest, because the goons keep messing with him. He throws him out of the ring. He beats one up out of the ring. Hassan tries to charge him. Oh no! Choke slam. 1, 2, 3. Woo! Keep beating up the goons. It's just randomly thrown in. Oh, by the way, the match is over. Just letting you guys know that. It just makes zero sense. But he ends up beating up all the bumbling bad guys like Home Alone. It looks like a scene from Home Alone because they're going like, "Whoa, no, I missed." Bong. And he does end up launching one into the steel steps. This is the loudest I've ever heard the steps sound. Throughout this show, the steps, normally in modern wrestling, the steps sound like this. But in this show, they sound like they are so loud. He throws one guy into them, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Because knowing, yes, it's
watch out,
but still, he does end up killing a guy, Muhammed Hassan, because he goes to the top of the ramp while Muhammad is crawling his way up while he's beating up all the bad guys. He crawls all the way up there. Undertaker meets him there. He takes off some of the floor panels. Hassan tries to attack. He gets caught with a last ride through the floor panels onto concrete and a lighting rig. Yes, it's off screen, so he just landed on a crash pad. But in kayfabe, he murdered Muhammad Hassan. Rest in peace, Muhammad Hassan. Whatever year he was born, 2005. Anyways, he kills Muhammad Hassan, and then the segment comes to an end. Makes zero sense, but hey, the match as a whole was fine. Then we go on to a Torrie Wilson backstage segment saying she knows what both the men and women want to see, and that she will deliver later on in the night. Then we move on to the Mexicools versus the BWO. This is probably the most modern match up to this point. High flying, flipping around. It's honestly very like AEW Dark. I feel like you could see this match on AEW Dark if you discount some of the like character acting. You like bump off the character acting, and then boom, this match goes perfectly well, like 2020 AEW Dark. And there you go. But nonetheless, they fly around like the 2018 indie scene. The first half of the match is with this guy called Nova, who's part of the BWO. Simon Dean. He was that guy. And it's not very good. It's perfectly fine. Then Stevie Richards comes in, and it immediately becomes a better match because Stevie Richards is like a gazillion times better than Nova. And, things pick up. They're doing these flips, flies, boom, 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 boom. And the Mexicools end up getting the W with a top rope leg drop following a moonsault. Again, pretty basic, but still fun enough. It's like 5 seconds short of being 5 minutes long. So nothing like notable, but at the same time, fine. Then we move on to the last good match on this show, Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, which is great. The second great match that I have found on this show. It's very entertaining and high-flying, and while, yes, the story surrounding it is a little stupid, I think the match as a whole is very good. And I will be honest, I was not paying attention for a lot of this match because I was busy. But I had my computer over there, and I was packing something. I don't need to explain what. But I was looking over there, and while I was in the middle of the packing, I was like, okay, let's see what's going on over there. I'd watch for like 2-3 minutes, go back to packing, and I'd take like 45-second breaks every now and then. But from what I did see, it does look like a pretty great match. So Eddie is holding some secret over Rey, which I have done no research to figure out the answer to. And if Eddie wins, he has said he will tell the secret to the whole world. Eddie ends up dominating most of the match, save the beginning, and is constantly going over to Dominic at ringside like, hey, how you doing? Giving him a hug, maybe a handshake, like, hey, And Rey's like, no, get away from my son. And, finally, after he does it enough, Rey runs over, stop it, blows Eddie up, bounces him around everywhere. And eventually, Eddie ends up hitting the frog splash on a very weakened Rey and goes to cover him all while staring at Dom. So he hits the splash, Boom! He turns over a Dom like, I'm going to tell this secret now. Very slowly lounges back on Rey, gets hooked for the cover. Rey kicks out at one, turns him over for a bit of a schoolboy roll-up. 1, 2, 3, and Rey ends up winning the match, and the secret stays hidden, at least for the night. Very fun, very entertaining. I did enjoy the bits of it that I did end up seeing, but it is unfortunately the last good match on the show. We move on to a JBL backstage segment, which is probably the funniest part of the show, where he says, in so many words, I will defeat Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship. Last time, I won the WWE title from Eddie Guerrero, but now, here in Buffalo, I will be winning this World Heavyweight Championship. I will become the first person to win a world championship in Buffalo, specifically wearing red, white, and blue, which is his attire for the night, since the Bills couldn't do it in 4 straight tries. Crowd boos. I also think that I'll be in the pantheon of great Americans. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., George W. Bush, and they will all bow down to me, John Bradshaw Layfield. And then he leaves. It's genuinely hilarious. And it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen on a wrestling show. We move on to the penultimate match of the night. It's Melina versus Torrie with special guest referee Candice Michelle in a bra and panties match. It's exactly what you think it is. It's just objectification of women. They wrestle a bit, which is why I'm not going to give it a bad. I'm going to give it a poor only because there is a little bit of wrestling in there. And it gets given, I guess, what can be considered time for women in the 2000s. It gets 5 minutes. So, wow. I mean, look at that. They must have depleted like 6 or 7 oxygen tanks when they went backstage. 5 whole minutes. Goodness gracious. But it's literally nothing. And eventually, by the end, all 3 women end up without their clothes on. It's horrendous. Melina wins for all that it matters. She ends up stripping Torrie down while having lost her top. But then eventually Torrie and Candice team up, take Melina's bottoms off, and then Candice is like, I may as well show my too. Voila. It's just objectification. It's nothing more than that. Horrendous. But still poor because they did wrestle a little bit, and it's not their fault they got put in this situation. It is bookings. Anyways, we move on to the main event. Oh my gosh, this match is bad. It's JBL versus Batista for that World Heavyweight Championship. And at the beginning, I was like, okay, these are 2 powerhouse brawlers. I think we can get a lot of good action out of this. Let's see what happens. The match is basic, bland, and they have 0 chemistry. Nothing of note happens. There was literally no spot where I was like, oh, wow, until the final 3 minutes when Orlando Jordan, who's part of JBL's cabinet or whatever, tries to interfere. He attacks Batista with a chair, and he's like, haha, go pin him, JBL, I got him. JBL hits a clothesline from hell. Batista kicks out. They're like, oh, no, he kicked out. They tried another chair shot. Batista counters. Batista bomb to Orlando Jordan. Batista bomb to JBL. But he does end up attacking both men with the chair, and he loses by DQ. The main event is a DQ loss by the champion to JBL and basically Orlando Jordan for a world title. That is horrendous. I wrote this a while ago. I put poor on here. It doesn't even deserve poor. This deserves bad. This is an awful ending. I've seen Goldberg Undertaker, and that, like, you can say, oh, they're old, things happen. Oh no. But this, these guys are basically in their primes. Like, guys, what is it? Okay, JBL's getting close to retirement, but at least Batista's in his prime. Like, oh my goodness gracious, this is bad. So let me finish off with my show review as a whole. So I went into the show and I expected literally everything to be awful, but I was surprised at the quality here. The last 2 matches are bad, sure. But otherwise, every match had at least something positive to gain from watching it. Christian and Booker is an underrated banger that I didn't see coming at all, and Eddie and Rey are great too. Otherwise, I was basically surprised by everything else on the card, except those last 2, and would rate the show comfortably a 7.5 out of 10 You can argue an 8 if you want to. So, that's my review of this Great American Bash 2005. Have you seen the show before? If you haven't, I only recommend you watch Christian and Booker and Eddie and Rey, and then there is nothing else that you need to watch on the show. But if you watch the rest except the last 2 matches, you won't have anything lost. Also, watch that JBL promo because it is hilarious. But anyways, make sure you have a good day, good evening, good night, good morning, good dawn, good dusk, good whatever. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe. Have a good day, good evening, good night, good morning, good dawn, good dusk, good whatever. I said that twice now. I guess I want you to have a real good one. And goodbye.